Hey everyone, Duke here, and today we're going over the changes and a few tips for the master version of Sundered Doctrine. To start, there's a couple of differences throughout the entire dungeon. First, the master version is at 2050 power throughout the entire dungeon, with a cap of 2030. That being said, I did run this at around 2020 power throughout, and it wasn't too terrible, but I do imagine the damage output you can do to be a little bit better the closer you can get to 2030 power. In order to help with some of that damage, we are going to want to take advantage of these surges. For this first week, those surges were Arc and Void, which is great as not only does the seasonal artifact support these two damage types heavily, but some of the most meta DPS weapons, that being Anarchy for Lockset and Queensbreaker for Karev, are both Arc, which can both benefit from that 25% Arc Surge buff. Just be sure to keep an eye on these surges if they do change from week to week. As for survival, it's pretty well known by now that you're going to want 100 resilience no matter your character. I'd also try to fit in a concussive dampener on your chest piece throughout this dungeon, as there is a lot of splash and explosive damage that is hard to completely avoid in multiple places, so being able to at least mitigate it some is paramount. A few other useful mods that are useful in most PvE content, but you're going to really find extra helpful in this highest tier of difficulty, are Heavy Ammo Finder and Scout to make both you and your teammates more heavy. Additionally, a Siphon mod for your main add-clear weapon of choice with a recuperation mod on your boots will give you an extra way to survive with orb generation and healing on orb pickup. Now let's talk about encounter changes for Master. Starting with the first encounter, there are now unstoppable champions. There will be one unstoppable per round, seemingly in a random room. These weren't too difficult to kill, but you're definitely going to want to deal with these right away so that they don't sneak up on you later. I did have to switch off of my normal delicate tomb setup, because even though it is a fusion rifle, it sadly cannot stun unstoppable champions, but a Riptide did just fine for stunning. I also used Anarchy here due to its set and forget damage over time on both the champions and subjugators, while also taking advantage of the Arc Surge Master modifier. Even without Delicate Tomb, I've been absolutely loving Arc Warlock this season, which I have a video going over my entire build that I will link in the description below. One thing to look out for here, especially on Master, is the explosive trackers that come out of the husks when you kill them. A, these really hurt super bad, especially on Master, and B, they seem to be able to accidentally hit the nodes where you turn the lights on in the middle, which can screw things up for you a bit, so try to kill them a bit away from the very center if possible. Now for the Lockset encounter, the only change is that the knights that spawn when a Shrieker checks a quote-unquote brain or remember symbol will be barrier champions in Master. With Anti-Barrier Sniper this episode, my loadout stayed exactly the same as on normal, with Anarchy once again, this time for DPS, as you can tag all 4 Shriekers for extra damage. One really big tip I have for this encounter is to always ensure that the wheel is spinning towards the stop symbol on the first rotation. I made a deep dive video on exactly how the wheels work, which I will link in the description, but the TLDR is that on the first rotation, all of the wheels will rotate 1 in the direction of the way that the wheel in the middle is spinning, unless it would rotate to kill. In that case, it will rotate 2 instead. By taking advantage of this, you can use less knowledge stacks from the wizards in order to get all of the wheels to be on stop, which makes it both faster and safer, as you don't need to run back and forth as much trying to get more knowledge. Other than that, a Titan with the new Storm's Keep aspect is a nice to have for extra bolt charge damage, but is certainly not required. There's actually almost more champions in the Traversal to the final boss than in the first 2 encounters, as there will be 3 total barrier champions and 2 unstoppable champions in this section. You aren't really under any pressure from them in this Traversal, so it's not a big deal, but I did want to just include this section so that you don't get jump scared by them like we did. For the final boss, Karev, there are both barriers and unstoppable champions. There's one unstoppable that spawns behind the main wheel at the start of each round, with a barrier knight in the underground section in middle, along with one in each of the side rooms with the Strand and Stasis subjugators. If you farmed a Tanisha's Mastery from Iron Banner with Chill Clip, this can be used for barrier with Anti-Barrier Sidearm in the artifact, and the Freeze from Chill Clip dealing with the unstoppable. As for damage, Queensbreaker is outstanding just like in normal, especially with Arc Surge active. There's a few different places to do damage from, but I've started to like the far back left the most, as you can use the little platform to protect you from most of the boss's attacks, and it has a little more space to maneuver than some of the other places I've tried to do damage from. One other tip for both the second and third encounters is that you can take advantage of having loadout swaps. There's a number of changes that you can make between these loadouts, but the most important ones that I usually try to take advantage of is having Recuperation and an Arc Scavenger on my boots for the Add Clear and Mechanics phase, and then swapping to Arc Surges for the damage phase. Do know that these boots surges do stack with the activity surge, so you can absolutely take advantage of both. I also usually start with Special Finisher and Proximity Ward on my class item before switching to Time Dilation for damage phase. This has the benefit of giving me more utility in the pre-damage phase, but also allows for me to stack non-time limited armor charges, which won't start ticking down until I swap loadouts to my Surges setup, allowing for guaranteed armor charge during DPS. Also note that a Divinity with Cenotaph or Aeons is a great way to make heavy for both the second and third encounters here, as there are the additional champions. And that's all for today. I hope this video on the changes and some tips for Master Sundered Doctrine was helpful, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.